Hi guys, it's me, ChazRHD, and welcome today to the race watch-along for the Dutch Grand Prix of 2021, the first Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort since 1985. Very, very long time since the last Grand Prix, and it's great to be back. A fantastic circuit, and I think we are in for an interesting race today. Maybe not the most exciting race because it will be pretty hard to overtake around the very tight and twisty turns of Zandvoort, even though it is quite high speed in certain parts of this of the track. Again, because how tight it is, I think it will be pretty hard to overtake. But I still think we are in for an interesting race, and definitely at the front, still a battle for the victory between, of course, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, the two contenders for the World Drivers' Championship. Hopefully, you guys are doing well, and hopefully, no matter what part of the world you are from, no matter what time it is, hopefully with me today, you will be watching along and enjoying the 2021 Dutch Grand Prix. If you can't watch that session, but you can listen along to me to keep up to date, then that is absolutely fine, of course. And hopefully you will enjoy me taking you through the action today. Now, unfortunately, yet again, I will be doing this stream solo. Nib, unfortunately, isn't very well at the moment. I don't think I'll go any more into that, to be honest. But obviously in Australia and his part of Australia, situation is not very good right now, put it that way. And yeah, he's just not very well right now. And has decided to not come on today, which is obviously absolutely fine. No one has to come on this stream. I don't have to do this stream if I don't want to. So, that's absolutely fine. And hopefully he will be on next weekend. But yeah, make sure to, love hearts and, all of that in the chat. And send your love to him, who I'm hoping will be back, like I said, next weekend. For, of course, the 2021 Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Which, of course, should be, hopefully, and like this Grand Prix, a very well-attended one. Now, let's get into what the starting grid is going to be for this Dutch Grand Prix. And in case you don't know what the starting grid is going to be, let me now take you through it. So, here are the qualifying results from yesterday. Max Verstappen, of course, in his home Grand Prix, will be starting on pole position. Lewis Hamilton starts in second. Third is Valtteri Bottas. The two Mercedes are engaged in battle today against the single Red Bull of Max Verstappen, even though Verstappen is in, of course, the best position possible, especially at this track. Then you have Pierre Gasly in P4. Great lap, I have to say, by Gasly. And then 5th and 6th are the two Ferraris of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. 7th is Antonio Giovinazzi. And then 8th and 9th are the two Alpines of Ocon and Alonso. And then 10th is Daniel Ricciardo. 11th is George Russell. 12th is Lance Stroll. 13th, Lando Norris. Now, after that, there are now a couple new changes to the starting grid. So Nicholas Latifi will be starting from the pit lane because they had to fit a new specification of front wing to his car after, of course, the accident he had in Q2 yesterday, and that is against the rules in, Parc Ferme. So Latifi will be starting from the pit lane in 19th. The reason he'll be 19th is because Sergio Perez will also be starting from the pit lane because Red Bull decided to fit some new parts to his power unit, which is understandable because Red Bull, I think, when they can, want to be getting those engine penalties out of the way, especially for Sergio Perez, who can try and help Max Verstappen in the World Championship fight. So Sergio Perez will be starting in 20th, Latifi 19th, so Latifi will be ahead of Perez in the pit lane, and then, because those two will be 19th and 20th, that means it'll be Yuki Tsunoda in 14th, Sebastian Vettel 15th, 16th will be Robert Kubica, 17th will be Mick Schumacher, 18th will be Nikita Mazepin, and then, like I said, 19th will be Nicholas Latifi, and 20th will be Sergio Perez. So that is your starting grid. Unfortunately, there is what do you call it, a couple changes to the grid, which in my race preview, I pretty much jinxed it, didn't I? Saying, oh, thankfully, for the first time in a while, we've not got any grid penalties or anything like that. And I think pretty much as my race preview stream ended, there was the announcement that Perez and Latifi would be starting from the pit lane. So, yeah, that is a shame for them. But at the end of the day, their problems in qualifying led to why they started, or are going to start, from the pit lane. But now, let's preview, or get into previewing this race. Of course, I did my race preview earlier, but let's just do a bit of a roundup of what I said earlier on for anyone who missed it. So, we'll start off at the top. Max Verstappen, of course, pole position is home Grand Prix. The whole crowd is expecting a race victory, and to be almost perfectly for Mercedes to then either have much fresher tyres than Red Bull to go and win the race and overtake Verstappen, or somehow come out ahead of Verstappen in some sort of overcut or undercut. I think, really, those are the only ways that Mercedes, like I said earlier in the race preview, that Mercedes can win the race today. I think as long as Red Bull and Verstappen get the pit stop when they pit right, obviously the pit stop itself, if it's, on time, if that goes well, and the start and any safety car restart goes well for Verstappen, then the chances of him winning are quite small. But like we've seen before with Mercedes, when they've had two cars against the one of Max Verstappen, or not even Max Verstappen, but others in the past, they're able to go for a different strategy that actually enables them, in the end, to be able to come through later on in the Grand Prix and get that successful reward. So, I think with Mercedes, I don't think you'll really see their race come into full circle and really see their race evolve until at least midway through the Grand Prix. And so just looking at Sky F1, and there was actually smoke coming out the back of Lando Norris's car on the way to the grid. And I'm going to guess McLaren are just trying to have a look around to see if there's anything wrong with Norris's car. Hopefully not. So, yeah, just a quick update about that. But, yeah, with Mercedes, I think you won't really see their real race evolve and start to evolve, really, until midway through the Grand Prix at the very earliest, because I think they will definitely try to go longer into the Grand Prix than Red Bull. And Mercedes do seem to have better tyre wear than Red Bull. At certain tracks, it can sometimes equal itself out between Red Bull and Mercedes in terms of who has the better tyre life, but in general, this season, Mercedes have tended to have tyres that have just been able to stay in a consistent tyre window longer in terms of grip than Red Bull. Red Bull tend to be able to do lots of good laps, but then when they start to get within, say, 5 laps of their pit stop, they start to drop off in lap time by quite a bit, when Mercedes tend to just be consistently within the window they need to be in, really until the pit stop. And Mercedes don't really ever tend to drop off or hit any sort of cliff. So, like I said, Mercedes, I think, will definitely go longer into the race than Red Bull. And from Red Bull's perspective, what they need to try and do, of course, is with Max Verstappen, try and build a bit of a lead and not allow the two Mercedes to just sit right behind him. Because if that is what happens, then I think then the possibility of Mercedes somehow passing Verstappen for an undercut or an overcut really now become good. And, that is obviously what Red Bull needs to protect against if they are in the lead at the end of the first lap. So, if Max can build, say, a 3-second lead by the time he, not by the time he pits, but around the time we're expecting people to come into the pits for their first and maybe only pit stop, given that we have the 3 hardest compounds this weekend, he might then, by the time we get to that point, which should be at the earliest, the absolute earliest, lap 20, probably lap 25 to be honest, if he does have like a 3-second lead, then vitally, he'll be able to then gradually extend that stint even longer to protect against an overcut. And then once Mercedes pit, then, he can then react to that, or Red Bull can react to that. But I think if Verstappen allows Hamilton and Bottas to be right, tucked up right behind him, then I think what we really could see is Mercedes just sat there, not really trying to overtake and just waiting for their chance to pounce on the pit stops. So Verstappen and Red Bull, I would expect, and I think they know that that's what Mercedes are after, that strategy. And I think what Red Bull will be doing in the first 10 to 15 laps is trying to pull out as much of a gap as they can so they're comfortable against an undercut or an overcut, and they themselves can extend their stint a bit longer into the race than they could if, say, the two Mercedes were tucked up right behind Max Verstappen. But when it comes to Red Bull, Max Verstappen, I think, definitely is in a great position. And I think in the fight for victory, Max Verstappen still, for me, is the favourite to win the Grand Prix because, home crowd, willing him on. We've seen so many times in Formula One history that when you're racing in front of your home fans, whether it's a team or driver, it does give you something extra, a real, extra boost of just wanting to do well in front of people that you obviously don't know, but people you relate to, and of course people of the same country, background, whatever you want to call it. So I think Max Verstappen will have just a bit of an extra boost this weekend, and has really, from what we've seen so far. And I think we'll have in this race just that extra boost to get him going in this Grand Prix. And I think Max Verstappen, I'll get on to my predictions for the top 5 later, but I'll say now, and I think, like I said, I think Mercedes will try really any old strategy to get past, but I think ultimately, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I still think Max Verstappen is going to win this race because I just think Max Verstappen will have too much pace and the Red Bull will have too much pace for Mercedes' undercut, overcut strategy, whatever you want to call it, to work out in the end, at the end of the 72 laps. So I think Red Bull will be just about okay, but I don't think Verstappen will dominate and win by 20 seconds or anything. It'll still be a 3-4 second type gap at the end of the race, which is comfortable, but not, not a dominant victory. Now we're done with the top teams there. Let's now get into the midfield. So, obviously, we normally first talk about teams like McLaren and Ferrari, and normally, McLaren and Ferrari, of course, with their battle with third in the Constructors, normally they are towards the front of the midfield with at least one of their cars. Now, Ferrari are, of course, in 5th and 6th, but McLaren are nowhere near in 10th and 13th. And I would say, I think this is a big day for Ferrari. Of course, in a week's time, the home Grand Prix for them is coming up, the Italian Grand Prix. And I think if they can even just finish where they've started, and McLaren don't really come through and get that great of a result, this could be a real turning point for Ferrari in that battle in the Constructors' Championship, because third would be a good result for Ferrari. It wouldn't be a great result for the team. It wouldn't be anything really to massively celebrate, but it would show real progression, and it would be a good boost, of course, going into the new era pretty much in 2022. And I think, like I said, if they can get even just 18 points from where they're starting from, or even more, maybe even 22 points if they finish 4th and 5th, that would be massive for them in that fight. And I think going into the Italian Grand Prix, even though I think McLaren should be quicker there, going into the rest of the season, I think a big points haul today could be vital for Ferrari. So we'll see how they do. And really, Ferrari should be 3rd quickest team in this race. The only man I think that could upset them today is Pierre Gasly, who of course is starting just ahead of them in 4th place. Gasly really overachieved in qualifying because the AlphaTauri isn't quite that good to be up in 4th on the grid, but Gasly really nailed his 2 Q3 laps to get right up there in the final part of qualifying. So, yeah, Gasly's in a bit of an unexpected position, to be honest, given AlphaTauri haven't been that great this weekend in comparison to where Gasly, of course, is on the grid. And yeah, that's really going to be the main fight, I would say, at the front of the midfield. It's going to be Gasly, Leclerc and Sainz fighting over 4th, 5th and 6th. When it comes to Sergio Perez, because he's now starting from the pit lane, I think Perez will probably finish. If he does finish in the points, it will be 10th, maybe 9th at the absolute best, like I said earlier. But I think even starting from the pit lane now, his chances of not finishing the points because of how hard it will be to overtake do increase quite a bit. So I think Perez is in for quite a struggle today. So yeah, like I said, with Gasly, Leclerc, Sainz, I think they'll be fighting for 4th, 5th and 6th. And then after that, it's really, you know, anyone's for 7th, between 7th and 17th on the grid. I think, and even Latifi and Perez, I think if they can come through, say the Haases and maybe Robert Kubica quite quickly, which they should do, because those 3 have been quite slow from what we saw yesterday, then we could have a 10-car battle pretty much for the remaining 4 points positions, if I can speak English, of 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th between, was it Giovinazzi, Ocon, Alonso, Ricciardo, Norris, Russell, Stroll, Vettel, Tsunoda, and like I said, Perez and Latifi as well. So we'll see what happens there, but I think definitely there'll be a train behind Antonio Giovinazzi because the Alfa Romeo is still pretty slow in a straight line. And I think Giovinazzi, despite having a very good qualifying session, I'm actually looking now, he was only a 10th of a second away, Giovinazzi, from qualifying in 5th place, which would have been an amazing result to out-qualify the 2 Ferraris in Holland, I have to say. But I don't think he'll be able to maintain that in the Grand Prix. And I think if you look at his general history of how he has performed in races, Antonio, I don't think really can make any more progress than what he, you know, made in qualifying, and I do think he will drop back in the race. I still think he has a good chance of points because his pace, you know, so far this weekend seems to be a bit extra than it normally is. But I think, I just think even with the difficulty of overtaking, eventually Giovinazzi will drop back at some point into the lower positions. I still think he could end up nicking a point or two, say, if things do play well in his favour and if that difficulty to overtake is, say, extra bad. Like I said, I think in my race preview earlier, if it's not, or if it's worse, rather, than it, say, we expect it to be, that might be his saving grace. But even if it's as we expect it to be, I think he'll lose a couple positions for sure. And I think definitely there is a strong possibility, because of the quality sitting outside of the top 10, or just sitting behind him in general, that he will drop out of the points. I got to say, though, I really hope he does finish in the points, because I really do like the guy. I think he should be in Formula 1, and I would like to see him stay at Alfa Romeo next season. I don't think he's been helped by the car at all in this last couple years. I think actually he's performed quite well in the last couple years, but because the car is so bad, he's not been able really to show how good he can be. When I think his pace in qualifying, despite being in a pretty shit car really for the last 2 years, has been very good. He's pretty much battered Kimi Raikkonen in qualifying in the last 2 years. So, yeah, I think Antonio, like I said, I think he deserves another year. Don't know if he'll get it, probably not, but I think he should get another year, because I think anyone who replaces him, I don't think is a real improvement on Antonio Giovinazzi, and I don't think there's anyone else out there who would really be that big of a step up from him. And like I said, I think he's done pretty well in the last couple years, considering the car he's been driving has been pretty poor and has only been capable really of a points finish when there's been enough retirements and craziness, really. Just goes to show you how poor Alfa Romeo have been and why also Kimi Raikkonen is retiring at the end of the season, of course. And of course, sad that Raikkonen is not racing in Holland. Of course, he's never raced in Holland before, and he never will get to race in Holland, which is a shame, but there you go. And yeah, like I said, with Giovinazzi and the rest of the pack, I think there'll be a big train behind Giovinazzi and a big battle for the rest of those points-paying positions. And it's going to be intriguing to see who comes out on top. I think the two strongest teams for sure out of that pack behind Giovinazzi will be Alpine and McLaren. I think those will be the two who come out the strongest. Also, we'll, of course, look out for Sergio Perez, who should be pretty strong as well. But he does have a lot of work to do around the circuit, which will probably be hard to pass that. Now we've got through the preview. By the way, just to say, the weather is fantastic, so you don't need to worry about that, thankfully. Not a cloud in the sky. I think this has got to be the first time we've probably ever wished for dry weather for an F1 race, I have to say. But I just want to say quickly, guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new, because we do watch-alongs for qualifying and races, and we will be for every race and qualifying session remaining in 2021. Of course, we'll be doing it next weekend for the Italian Grand Prix. I won't be doing a sprint qualifying watch-along because you know why, but I will be doing a qualifying watch-along on the Friday, and then, of course, a race watch-along this time next week for the Italian Grand Prix. So don't forget, like I said, to come along to that, or come along to all of those things between now and the end of the season. And don't forget, importantly, to subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications bell as well, and as well, smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. Now, we have, 7 minutes pretty much until the formation lap will be getting underway at Zandvoort. So, now that we're only a few minutes away, right now, in the live chat, guys, give me your final top 5 prediction for today's 2021 Dutch Grand Prix. Who do you think will finish in the top 5? Who do you think is going to win the race, finish in 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th? Let me know right now in the live chat. I will give my top 5 prediction just quickly. So, Max Verstappen, I think, will win the race. I think it'll be Lewis Hamilton in 2nd, Valtteri Bottas 3rd, and then Charles Leclerc 4th, and Pierre Gasly in 5th, and then Carlos Sainz I'll put in 6th place, and then after that, who knows. But yeah, that's my top 6, but I want your guys' top 5 predictions again for today's Dutch Grand Prix, which gets underway in just a few minutes' time, and hopefully there won't be any serious fireworks at the front again in terms of an accident that ruins the race, because, of course, we do not want that. And but given how tight the track is, if there's another big collision between Hamilton and Verstappen, I think this time the impact might be even worse, which obviously we don't want, than it was at Silverstone or Max Verstappen. But let me just go to the chat and see what you guys have to say in regards to what you think will happen in this race. The first one is from Marco, who says he can't speak English today. Jesus fucking Christ. His prediction, Marco's prediction, is Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas, Leclerc, Sainz. Bravo Moz is his prediction is Lewis, Max, Leclerc, Bottas, Sainz. Gaming and Tech Geek is Norris, Verstappen, Leclerc, Bottas, Ricciardo. If Norris wins this race, then I'll probably drink a pint of milk if that happens. Erin says Verstappen, Hamilton, Gasly, Leclerc, Bottas. Rooksfoot says Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Bottas, Gasly. Rivaldo says Max, Hamilton, Bottas, Leclerc, Sainz. Cormalapedia says Max, Hamilton, Bottas, Vettel, Sainz. Keith Haas says Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Bottas, and, well, says Saint, but I think he means Carlos Sainz, who is a bit of a saint, but there you go. EJ says Max Hamilton, Ricardo, Leclerc. We've got one there. Can't pronounce your name quite, but it says Verstappen, Gasly, Hamilton, Leclerc, Ricardo. Robert Smith says Lewis, Max, and then who cares? Yeah. Condor Flight says Lewis, Ricardo, Max, Valtteri, and then Bottas. Let me see if there's any others here. JDM Gearhead says Lewis, Max, Bottas, Leclerc, Sainz. Astro Steve says Bottas, Ricardo, Hamilton, Leclerc, Norris. And so Regara says Bottas, Verstappen, Leclerc, Gasly, Sainz, Hamilton for his top 6. And EJ says Gasly today, 4th at least. But if you've got any more predictions, guys, then make sure to put them in the live chat. And I'll read them out quickly before we get going, as the F1 intro is already playing. And they're getting towards the end of it now, just showing the track layout. By the way, I just want to update you guys. I said this in the race preview, but I know there wasn't as many watching that as there are people watching now. The race review will be uploaded later, but it will not be streaming live. The reason is because I'm very tired. I've been up since 4:30 in the morning. I didn't plan to get up at 4:30 in the morning. It's just the way it happened. And I am very tired, and I'm not in the best condition physically. So what I'm going to do is when the race finishes and the race watch-along finishes, I will, as soon as I can, record the race review and then upload it as soon as possible, and then you guys, of course, can watch that when it comes out. But yeah, I won't be streaming that live tonight, and I will also say there is a chance that that might become a permanent thing in the future, because I don't want to stress myself out as much as I was earlier in life when it comes to this channel. So keep your eyes peeled for any new schedules with that. And also, if there is any incidents to analyse, don't worry, I will analyse it in that video and also clip it from that part of the race review and upload it on Monday anyway, if you guys want to see that. And talking of clips, I, of course, will be uploading the best bits from this stream on Monday or Tuesday. If there's not a race incident to analyse, then I will be uploading that on Monday or Monday afternoon sometime. I don't know what time exactly yet, but it'll be sometime on Monday afternoon if there is no incident in the Grand Prix to analyse. But, guys, thankfully, here for the Dutch Grand Prix, like I said, the weather is clear, no worries about rain. No having to worry about the weather radar, what the radar says. We are finally going to get a race for the first time since the Hungarian Grand Prix many, many weeks ago. And hopefully this Grand Prix will be exciting to a certain extent. The track layout isn't great for racing, but hopefully we'll get something interesting enough for us in this Grand Prix. But now I will get the graphics ready for you guys. Just need to adjust a couple things. Of course, I'll get the text thing out of Kubica. There you go. I'll move that Kubica thing forward there, and I'll relegate Perez and Latifi down in just a moment. Just do that now. Nope, not like that. Like that. So, like I said, Latifi and Perez starting from the pit lane in 19th and 20th. Meaning that Vettel will start in 15th and then Kubica 16th. By the way, sorry that I don't have Kubica's name, ready to go on the screen like it is with Raikkonen's, but happened all last minute. I can't really change anything about it, unfortunately. But what you see on the left-hand side is the starting grid for the Grand Prix here in Holland. All the starting tyres are softs for everyone. Soft tyres for everyone except for Russell and Norris, who are on the mediums. Kubica's on the mediums. Mazepin and Latifi are on the mediums. And Perez, interestingly, on the C1 hard compound tyres, which will take some time to fire up. As the green light now goes for the formation lap. So we are now on the formation lap. And thankfully, because how short the lap is, it won't be too long until we're underway. But let me just get the last couple things ready for the start here. As there you go, there's the lap thing, and I'll just get the counter up as well. I'm pretty sure it's a 72 lap race. The only reason I say that is because, well, it is on the F1 game. I'm going to assume they're correct with that. So it should be a 72 lap Grand Prix here in Holland. And very, very much looking forward to it here. As now, Max Verstappen leads the front of the field through the middle part of the lap. Max Verstappen now going into turn 10, which is now pretty much entering the last third of the lap here at Zandvoort. Turn 10, a lot quicker of a corner in real life than it is on the F1 game, I will say. As the smoke bombs are everywhere in the crowd, willing Max Verstappen on to what they hope is a certain victory. And remember, if Max Verstappen does win this Grand Prix, then Max Verstappen will take the lead of the Drivers' Championship. Just a reminder quickly of the starting grid. Max Verstappen on pole, Hamilton second, Bottas third, and then Gasly fourth, Leclerc fifth, Sainz in sixth, Giovinazzi seventh, Ocon 8th, Alonso 9th, 10th is Daniel Ricciardo, and then Russell 11th, Stroll 12th, 13th is Norris, 14th is Tsunoda, 15th Vettel, 16th Kubica, and then 17th Schumacher, 18th Mazepin, 19th Latifi, 20th Perez. Saying that, I don't see Latifi at the end of the pit lane just yet. So, I don't know what, and he's waiting in his pit box still with the tyre warmers on, which is actually quite a smart idea to keep the tyres warm. Of course, they don't need to leave the pit lane until the green light goes. He doesn't need to leave his pit box as of yet. As the front of the field, or the front half of the field now lining up on the grid, and the teams prepare for the start as the smoke bombs have let off quite a bit of smoke on the pit straight. Hopefully the drivers will be able to see coming through the banking at the end of the first lap. That's one thing we do not need, is any poor visibility, as now the two Haas's at the back of the field line up. And now the green flag waves at the back. And the lights come on here in Holland. 4 lights and 5 lights here at Zandvoort. And lights out and away we go. And Max Verstappen has got a good start. So has Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton has a decent start, but not as good as Max Verstappen, as Gasly locks up his inside front and goes a bit wide, but I think he will maintain position. Will he over the 2 Ferraris? Yes, just about. So, Gasly is still in 4th place. Giovinazzi is, I think, now down to 8th, or just about down to 8th. There's an Alpine very close next to him. Giovinazzi there was trying to get past Carlos Sainz on the run through turn 4 and 5, and I think there was slight contact there with an Alpine with Antonio Giovinazzi, and Giovinazzi now has lost about 3 positions to the 2 Alpines, and now I think Daniel Ricciardo as well, as they now come through the mid part of the lap. So Giovinazzi having a very, very poor start, which is not what he needed there. And I'm pretty sure he's down to 10th, as I think Lance Stroll is actually Alonso up in 7th place. Lance Stroll side by side there, I think, for a brief time, with George Russell going down to turn 11, which is the end, of course, of the second DRS straight. And then it's Russell 11th, Stroll in 12th. We're already on lap 2, and Max Verstappen already has a commanding lead at the front. Don't know what the exact lead is, but it is quite commanding already. As the 2 Haas's going wheel to wheel at turn 1. And Mazepin trying to get past his teammate, but nothing doing. But let me just do the order. So yeah, Russell is 11th, even though that was Sebastian Vettel actually on the inside of Yuki Tsunoda at turn 3. Yeah, Russell is 11th, and Stroll 12th, 13th, Norris 14th, Tsunoda 15th, Vettel, Kubica is still 16th, Mazepin is now up to 17th, ahead of Mick Schumacher. And yeah, Perez ahead of Latifi. I don't know why Perez got ahead of Latifi in the pit lane there, but there you go. Max Verstappen's lead is 2 seconds. And we're not even through fully the first 2 laps of this Grand Prix. So Max Verstappen doing exactly what he needs to do, try and build a gap to the rest, as the 2 Ferraris are struggling at the moment to hold on to the Alpine, or not the Alpine, the AlphaTauri of Pierre Gasly ahead. As Verstappen now does a new fastest lap of the Grand Prix. And yeah, the gap now about 2.1 seconds between Verstappen and Hamilton. Verstappen's fastest lap of 1:14.9, which is what, about 6 seconds off pole position. As we're now looking at Lando Norris, is on the medium compound tyre and is behind Lance Stroll in this fight for 11th place. Russell, I'd say, is probably at the start of a bit of a train here. Russell is on the medium compound tyre, but he cannot, at the moment, get DRS from the back of Antonio Giovinazzi. So Russell holding up a few cars. Here's a replay of the start. Verstappen and Hamilton got away just fine. Gasly had a bit of trouble to start with a bit of a lock-up at turn 1, but he had enough acceleration around the outside of turn 1 that he could get through just fine. Here's now a replay of Russell in the Williams. And contact there a couple times between the 2 Alpines, and I think there might have been the smallest bit of contact between Russell and one of the Alpines there. Here's now a replay of Giovinazzi and Carlos Sainz, and Giovinazzi and yeah, there is what the contact was between Giovinazzi and Alonso. So Alonso braking earlier than Giovinazzi, and Giovinazzi very nearly sending Alonso into the gravel, clipping the back of him. And just a replay there of Mazepin and Schumacher racing a bit. And just a replay of Ricciardo's rear end and more smoke coming out of the back of the McLaren. Don't know if that's the same McLaren that was smoking earlier, as we're now on lap 4 out of 72. And Max Verstappen has done another new fastest lap of 1:14.8. And he is 2.3 seconds, now 2.4 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton. As interestingly, Esteban Ocon is all over the back of Fernando Alonso for 7th and 8th places. By the way, Sergio Perez is making progress. He is now up to 18th place, as DRS is now enabled for the drivers. And Ocon will get DRS here. Alonso will not get DRS from Carlos Sainz ahead because he's not within a second, I don't believe, of the Ferrari. And the DRS doesn't really have that big of an effect on a car ahead that doesn't have DRS down to turn 1, because the straight simply isn't long enough. As we now are on lap 5 out of 72. And Ocon into turn 3 got quite close up the inside, but that's kind of the effect that corner has, that you can try that. But definitely Ocon is quicker than Fernando Alonso, as Mick Schumacher is already in the pits. Hamilton saying on team radio, these tyres are going to struggle to keep this pace, which of course is not good news for Mercedes, because they need to go longer, preferably, than Red Bull with against Max Verstappen, as Verstappen is now 2.5 seconds clear of Hamilton, as Latifi is now 19th. Schumacher has come in for a pit stop and I think a new front wing, and is now 20th on the hard compound tyre. As, by the way, Sergio Perez is right behind Nikita Mazepin on that hard tyre, as we now enter lap 6 out of 72. And here's a replay of Ocon. I don't think he was really attempting an overtake there, because I think he knew that Alonso was going to hold it around the outside of turn 3. I think he was almost letting Alonso know he was there and almost showing to the team, I can go a lot quicker if let through. And here's just a replay now of Fernando Alonso. So yeah, contact with the back of Ocon briefly. Then he goes right round the outside of Ocon and Giovinazzi. Giovinazzi then pulls back ahead. But then when Giovinazzi has to lift off because of Carlos Sainz, Alonso then goes around him and gets the position, as Verstappen is 2.7 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton now. Verstappen at the moment pulling away by about a quarter of a second a lap, which is too much if you are Mercedes. And Ocon saying Fernando is extremely slow in front. I wouldn't say extremely slow, but definitely quite a bit slower than Ocon right now. That is 100% for sure. Because Carlos Sainz has already pulled a 3-second lead over Alonso from 6th. You know, Sainz in 6th to Alonso in 7th. And Ocon is just tucked up now behind Fernando Alonso. And, of course, I thought it would be Giovinazzi who would be causing a train. But it is now actually Fernando Alonso who's starting to cause a bit of a train. As replay of Perez behind the Haas there of Mazepin. Massive lockup by Sergio Perez on the right front tyre. And he's put a flat spot, quite a bad one, through his right front tyre. And Perez, I think, might have to come into the pits a bit sooner than he would have liked on that one, because that was a very heavy lockup into turn 1. As Max Verstappen is about to lap Mick Schumacher. No, he's not that quick. It's because Mick Schumacher had to pit for a new front wing, I believe. But Verstappen definitely setting the track alight, and he's now 3 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton on now the beginning of lap 8 out of 72. And then, yeah, Hamilton is in 2nd. Valtteri Bottas 3rd. And then, of course, Gasly 4th, Leclerc 5th, Carlos Sainz in 6th, and then Alonso, Ocon, Ricciardo, and Giovinazzi is your top 10. As Mick Schumacher lets Verstappen through. Mick is going to have a very, very long day now, because he'll have to let through a lot of cars and will pretty much get lapped by most of the field before even half distance. As Verstappen already into turn 10 on lap 8. And the Red Bull looks very smooth, very consistent, no real issues. They're just showing the difference between Max and Bottas on lap time. And at the moment, Max Verstappen going half a second at least quicker than Valtteri Bottas. As now they're showing Pierre Gasly in 4th place, who is not just in 4th place, he is comfortably in 4th place. Charles Leclerc is 4 seconds behind him. So Gasly in a very comfortable position right now, as Max Verstappen has pulled his gap by a further couple tenths already on this lap. And now on lap 9, it is 3.2 seconds between Max and Lewis up front. And yeah, Max looks in a very comfortable position. If Max can just maintain this gap, then he's in a great position, because even if Mercedes tries something peculiar on strategy, Max Verstappen has the lead to be able to react and not lose out as much as he would if they were tucked up right behind him. As Verstappen quickly coming through turn 10. As Sergio Perez, by the way, like I said, that flat spot was a big problem. And it is a big problem because Sergio Perez is in the pits. So Latifi is up to 18th. Sergio Perez, let's see what tyre he goes on to. Can't quite see at the moment, but he has pitted and he is on the soft compound tyre, I believe. Sergio Perez is now in 19th position. And he should have the pace to not get lapped. And he should have the pace to just catch right back up to Latifi and Mazepin, as Lewis Hamilton finally does respond with a fastest lap at the beginning of lap 10 and cuts the gap down by 0.4 of a second. Lewis Hamilton finally starting to respond up front and show Verstappen that it is not now going to be just an easy win and an easy walk to victory. As Hamilton, even on this lap, is gaining. He's gained 1/10 of a second so far on this lap. So Mercedes just taking it easy, and now they're starting to get after Max Verstappen and Red Bull. Yeah, Lewis Hamilton, 4/10, so they're just showing on the screen, pretty much 4/10 of a second quicker than Max Verstappen, and the gap is now down to 2.7. Now it's up to 2.9. I'm going to guess Lewis Hamilton had a slightly poor exit from turn 10. But yeah, Hamilton definitely now looking a lot better than he was. He was consistently in the first 10 laps losing a quarter of a second a lap, and then now it looks as though he's able to at least match Max Verstappen, because on this lap he's not gained any more on this lap, but it is still 2.8 seconds. So Hamilton definitely in better shape now. I've got to say, Valtteri Bottas not really in play here. Bottas is, what, 7.5 seconds pretty much off the lead? Yeah, he is. 7.5 seconds off the lead after 11 laps. So Valtteri Bottas is pretty much out of play here. Unless Max pits before Valtteri does, and then they keep Valtteri out to hold up Max Verstappen. But I don't think that Red Bull would make such a simple mistake, because that would hand Mercedes the race, I think. As Sebastian Vettel has come into the pits. So Kubica is now in 15th place. Kubica's pace is actually not too bad. He's only, 3 seconds behind Yuki Tsunoda, who is 14th. Not too bad at the moment from him. Mazepin is 16th, and then you got Latifi 17th, Perez 18th, Sebastian Vettel has come out in 19th place in the Aston Martin. Lance Stroll, however, is in the other Aston Martin, right behind the Williams of Russell, going through now turn 11 and 12. He's close, but there's no way really through this part of the track that you can get through. As Hamilton, by the way, I think on that lap was a tad quicker, or if not, was definitely pretty much equal with Max Verstappen. As will Lance Stroll send it down the inside. Russell semi-defends the inside line and brilliantly holds ahead of Lance Stroll, but Stroll definitely could go quicker here. Russell, though, got to say, doing pretty well. He's only, I think, about 1.2, 1.3 seconds behind Giovinazzi ahead of him. Giovinazzi's only a second behind Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren. So Russell is doing pretty well, despite definitely holding up Lance Stroll at the moment, as we're now on lap 13 out of 72. And Stroll unable at the moment to find a way through. And Lando Norris is just about within DRS of these two, but is nowhere near close enough to really try anything on Stroll or Russell, as Verstappen currently leading by 2.9 seconds. And pretty much now, Verstappen and Hamilton lapping at about the same speed. The real thing we need to see is, from Mercedes, if they're going to really go after victory here, is can they close that gap, or is Max Verstappen just looking after his tyres and waiting until the pit stops where he can really push and use up the grip to make sure he maintains the lead? On this lap, Max Verstappen actually pulling away a bit, gap now to 3 seconds, as Nicholas Latifi has just overtaken Nikita Mazepin. So Latifi is up to 16th place in the Williams. And his next target, Latifi, is the man he replaced at Williams, Robert Kubica. As on lap 14, Verstappen was actually quicker on that lap, but only by 1/10 of a second, I believe, over Lewis Hamilton. Here's a replay of Latifi passing Mazepin, and that's a very good overtake round the outside of turn 1. I mean, the banking and the way that the corner is. Similar to the turn 1 at Mugello. Does allow you to go around the outside, and it is, to be honest, more favourable. But it is still a very good overtake there by Nicholas, as Max is actually, again, quicker on this lap compared to Hamilton. The gap up to 3.3 seconds, so Max Verstappen starting to push again. As really, the only battle on track that we have, guys, is Russell versus Stroll for 11th place. And here's a replay of Max Verstappen in turn 11. They're just showing a slow-mo just to show how spectacular the car is. And, by the looks of it, his tyres look pretty okay. I mean, the grip will definitely have dropped off quite a bit compared to what it was like a few laps ago. But his tyres do not look like they need to be changed for new ones. Put it that way. So, Verstappen now leading on lap 15 by 3.3 seconds. And Valtteri Bottas, by the way, is 9.5 seconds off the lead. So, like I said, Valtteri Bottas is pretty much out of contention here. Not just for any positions ahead of him, but also he can't really play a role in interfering on Mercedes' behalf because he's too far behind. He needed to be really within 3 seconds of his teammate to still be within a zone where he can interfere with Max Verstappen and still not ruin his race completely. But at this point, Max Verstappen won't need to worry, I don't think, about Valtteri Bottas at any point during this Grand Prix. As now they are on lap 16 at 72. And Verstappen looks as though he's about to extend his lead up to about 3.5 seconds over Lewis Hamilton. As now we are looking at Sergio Perez still, like he was earlier, stuck behind Nikita Mazepin. Well, if Latifi can pass him, surely Sergio Perez can. And Perez has got a much better exit from turn 10. Mazepin, I was going to say defends the position. I was going to say stupidly because, you know, why are you fighting a Red Bull? But thankfully, let Perez through because Sergio Perez is obviously much faster. Not just as a driver, but he's in a much faster car. So Perez is up to 17th and soon Sebastian Vettel will be coming through. And Vettel, I think, is on a very hopeful strategy, I have to say. Pitted quite early. Don't know if it was a slow puncture or something. I'm going to assume so. Because, yeah, that was a very, very early pit stop. And if it wasn't a slow puncture, then I'm going to guess they're on a 2 or a 3 stop race. Because, yeah, that's quite a poor strategy there. As Verstappen, now on lap 17, is indeed 3.5 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton. And Lance Stroll is still tucked up behind the Williams of George Russell and unable to go anywhere. And when I look at the rest of the field, this is the only battle that we have. And I don't think you're really going to see Stroll be able to go for a move. The reason being, because of course, they're both running the same power unit. If it was Stroll against Giovinazzi, I think there definitely would be something to talk about in regards to those two. As Hamilton, we're just watching him now coming through the exit of turn 12, and he is still progressively losing time to his rival Max Verstappen, who at the moment, and I do stress, at the moment, is heading for the lead of the World Championship with P1. And Valtteri Bottas now, 10.5 seconds off the lead. Hamilton on that lap was actually, I wouldn't say quicker, but pretty much the same on lap time, I think, as Max Verstappen on that lap. As just to update you, so Gasly is 27 seconds off the lead. Not the two Ferraris, but Charles Leclerc is half a minute off the lead. Sainz is 36 seconds off the lead. And then you've got the Alpines about 10 seconds behind the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, which is quite a lot. And I've got to say, there is quite a lot of field spread in the order. So, you know, obviously 17-second gap between Bottas and Gasly, third and fourth. That was to be expected on lap 18 out of 72. But, you know, Gasly 2.5 seconds pretty much ahead of Leclerc. That's a bit of a shock that Gasly's so quick so far. Don't quite understand why Carlos Sainz is 6.5 seconds behind Charles Leclerc. He's losing what? A couple tenths of a second per lap by the looks of it is Carlos Sainz to his teammate. And then Fernando Alonso, 10.5 seconds behind Carlos Sainz even. So there is quite a lot of field spread in that upper part of the midfield, which is not something I expected. I didn't expect it to be that big. But then, from Alonso back, it is a lot closer. Really, from Alonso all the way down to Perez, you have... I'm going to see how much lap time as Perez, Dag, I think, has just sent it down the inside of Nicholas Latifi at turn 10. Latifi, they're going to fight it round the outside. And will he hold it? Or will Perez go right around the outside? Yes, he does. And Latifi smartly lets him go because Perez, of course, on the medium compound tyre, by the way, Sergio Perez, is much faster. So Sergio Perez is up into 16th place, and the next car in his sights, a second and a half up the road, is Robert Kubica, who is, like I said, driving well. He's only 3.2 seconds behind Yuki Tsunoda, and he's not really doing that bad at all. As Perez is a replay, and yeah, DRS open, round the outside. He's on the grippier line as Perez into turn 11, and also I think Latifi didn't want to fight it as hard as he would have if it was an Alfa Romeo or an Haas car. As we now enter lap 20 out of 72, and Max Verstappen leads by 3.7 seconds from Lewis Hamilton. Valtteri Bottas is now pretty much nearing 11 seconds off the lead, I think. He will get there, Bottas being that far off the lead. Got to say, though, Valtteri's pace has improved, and by the looks of it, he is now lapping about the same speed as Lewis Hamilton, if not a tad quicker, and is also lapping a bit quicker than... Well, not a bit quicker, but, you know, around the pace of Verstappen and Hamilton. It says that Hamilton is lapping slightly quicker, but the gap is actually increasing between Verstappen and Hamilton. And Perez right now going around the outside of Robert Kubica, and he gets the move done. So Sergio Perez is now up to 15th place. And Kubica is down to 16th as Lewis Hamilton comes in to the pits. So Mercedes have, I think, well, they've not admitted defeat. I wouldn't quite say that, but they're definitely now not on the strategy they would have wanted to be on with Lewis Hamilton. They're going to try now and force the hand of Red Bull and Max Verstappen. So Hamilton briefly is now down into 3rd place. And Bottas is up to 2nd. Wasn't the quickest pit stop. Was probably a second too slow. So that will give Verstappen a bit of breathing space. But I think Max Verstappen will probably come into the pits at the end of this lap. That would be the smart thing to do. But will Red Bull actually do it? As Hamilton, I'm sure, giving it everything. And yeah, Red Bull getting ready for a pit stop. And they say box to Max Verstappen as he heads now into the Zandvoort pit lane, which is quite tight, but it's not as tight as some people make out. Not quite as tight as the Monaco pit lane. And Verstappen's pit stop about a second quicker than Lewis Hamilton's, as we're now on lap 22 out of 72. About 50, or pretty much, 50 laps to go. And Verstappen comes out on track and maintains the net lead of the Dutch Grand Prix. Bottas is now into the lead, but Valtteri Bottas has not pitted yet. And I'm going to guess, and it would be the only thing they can really do now, Mercedes, is keep Bottas out there to hold up Max Verstappen when Verstappen gets up to the back of him. If they don't do that, then I don't really understand what the point of pitting Hamilton when they pitted him was. Hamilton, though, has closed the gap to Verstappen through, now having warmer tyres and the extra lap and the undercut there. He's now cut the gap down to about 2.2 seconds or 2 seconds now between Verstappen and Hamilton. But most importantly, Verstappen now has 1 lap fresher tyres and the all-important track position. So it doesn't really matter that Lewis Hamilton is going quicker at the moment. Because, like I said, he has track position, does Max Verstappen, as we're now on lap 23 out of 72. And that picture on screen is pretty much a representation of what the Alpines were like on the first lap. As Lewis Hamilton does a new fastest lap, a 1:13.7, and Verstappen going about a second a lap quicker than Valtteri Bottas out in the lead. So that continues itself, and Max will probably catch Bottas in 8 laps time or something, and then Bottas can try and hold up the Red Bull. As I got to say, Mercedes do seem to be quicker on this compound, because Hamilton now only about 1.7 seconds behind Verstappen on this lap. And we've seen this over the years, that Mercedes do tend to be stronger on the harder compounds. I think it's because on the softer compounds, one, they do struggle at times to warm the compound up, but secondly, sometimes they do overheat those softer compounds and get to show, of course, their extra speed when they are on compounds that can take punishment of the brutal speed that they put through it. As we're now on lap 24 out of 72, and Bottas is still leading, but a reminder, Valtteri has not pitted yet. The gap, though, went down by at least 1.5 seconds on that lap, so Bottas is going to be caught very, very quickly, and Mercedes are going to have to hope that he can hold up Max, because with that speed, might be pretty hard to do. As Perez now right behind Yuki Tsunoda down to turn 11, and he'll go right down the inside, and Sergio Perez up to 14th, and Perez making very nice progress. It does seem, if you're on much fresher tyres, that overtaking is a lot easier around this track, which is what I expected, but it is interesting to note for later on, as Bottas has just said on team radio that he is starting to have vibrations. The gap in about 2 laps has come from 9.5 seconds down to 6 seconds, so Valtteri now losing a lot of time out there. As, by the way, Charles Leclerc has closed the gap to Pierre Gasly to just 1 second. So Leclerc now putting the pressure on his good friend, who is still doing a stellar job in 4th place. And Verstappen, now on lap 25, will be catching, according to AWS, Bottas in about 3 laps' time. As Pierre Gasly comes into the pits, also Nicholas Latifi has just come into the pits for his stop. And Gasly comes in. Pit stop looks fine. So Leclerc up to 4th and Sainz in 5th. Where will Gasly come out? He will come out in 7th place behind Fernando Alonso. There's a nice gap in between Alonso and Ocon. I've got to say, with Ocon, don't know what happened, but he has dropped back massively from his teammates. Now 6.5 seconds behind him. Don't quite understand why he has dropped that far behind. If he was legitimately quicker, he would still be with him by, 1.5 seconds or something. As Bottas about to start lap 26. I'll update the lap counter in just a moment. Just want to update that Sebastian Vettel is now up to 17th. And yeah, Valtteri Bottas's tyres are pretty much dead. And Mercedes are using him quite obviously as a guinea pig to hold up Max Verstappen when Max Verstappen gets up to the back of the Flying Finn's car. And if Bottas, one thing that will kind of help Verstappen is if Bottas does stay out for a few more laps, and Bottas just saying on team radio, tyres are definitely dropping a bit more, but I guess they will do a few more laps. If he can, there is quite a train up ahead. I think, I'm trying to see who it is. I think it's Giovinazzi back to Sergio Perez and also Tsunoda. So if Bottas can catch his way up to that pack, then that might allow Max Verstappen to find his way through, because we know Valtteri Bottas isn't the greatest at lapping traffic. And of course, that traffic hasn't pitted yet, and these guys have, so they will probably lap that lot when they eventually pit. As Lewis Hamilton, by the way, has limited the gap now between himself and Max Verstappen down to just 1.5 seconds. Max was only half a second quicker than Bottas on that lap. Max is going to have to get on with it. I know he won't want to be held up. He won't want his front tyres to be burnt out in the dirty air of Valtteri Bottas, but he's going to have to try and get up to him and overtake him as soon as possible and get him out of the way and basically eliminate him from this race. As Bottas is definitely quite a bit slower on this lap than Verstappen. Hamilton, about 1.7 seconds behind. As, by the way, Pierre Gasly is within a second of Fernando Alonso. If Gasly can't pass Alonso, that will be music to the ears of Charles Leclerc, because that will allow Leclerc to do more laps in clean air and probably come out ahead of Gasly and Alonso as well. As now on lap 28, Max Verstappen has cut the lead down between him and Valtteri Bottas to 2.5 seconds. And oh no, let's not do that. He has not got the lead yet, but he will once Valtteri either gets overtaken or pits. But another thing that will be interesting to see is whether Lewis and Max go to the end on this tyre. Because if they're not going to the end and Valtteri Bottas is, then Valtteri Bottas is in a very good position. Because if Bottas can get to, say, lap 35 and in the lead, then once he comes in for his only pit stop, then he'll start to gain time on Verstappen and Hamilton, and then Bottas will be in pretty much the lead of the race, as Pierre Gasly is now up to 6th place. So he's passed Alonso, which is vital for his race. And now I think Ferrari are going to have to pit the car of Charles Leclerc, as I was just seeing what's going on with the running order on the left-hand side on the TV, and lots of cars have just come into the pits. Russell, Stroll, and Giovinazzi have all come in for their first pit stop. So let me just update that we're now on lap 29 at 72. Here's a replay of Gasly passing Alonso and just sailing around the outside of turn 1. And I think that just shows that outside line at turn 1 is the best line for overtaking. It's the line I use on the F1 game, and it is always great. It also shows that those soft tyres on Alonso's car are absolutely dead. And he'll have to come in and get those replaced quite soon, as Max Verstappen is now within a second of Bottas. Again, reminder, Bottas has not pitted yet. So Gasly's up to 6th. Norris now is up to 10th because of those pit stops. Perez is now 11th. Yuki Tsunoda is up to P12. And then Robert Kubica is in 13th place there. And then Giovinazzi 14th, Russell 15th, and Stroll in 16th. So Sebastian Vettel's early pit stop has clearly not worked for him. As now Verstappen on lap 30 out of 72 within a second of Valtteri Bottas. So now we will see whether Max can get the job done or whether Mercedes' plan will work. The bits of the circuit where Max has got to look to, get a proper run on Bottas is, of course, on the exit of the corners. That's where Bottas will be struggling the most with his older and not in good condition, I have to say, soft compound tyres, as they are actually coming up to lap a car of Robert Kubica, I believe, as now they come into turn 10. And here on the exit of turn 10 is preferably where Max Verstappen needs to get a great run on Bottas, but he can't. And there you goes. But Bottas, by the looks of it, ran a bit wide there, unless that's just his line through there at the moment. But can Verstappen now, through turn 13 and onto the banking, get a good run on Bottas and pass him? Surely he will get the overtake done here. Bottas is going so slow. Verstappen pulls to the inside. And now lap 31, Max Verstappen is back into the official lead of the Grand Prix. And surely, and yet Bottas does let Lewis Hamilton through. Lewis Hamilton now right behind Max Verstappen within 0.8 of a second of the Flying Dutchman up front, as Mazepin has, I think, just pitted. Mazepin is down to 19th and Latifi up to 18th at the moment. And yeah, Bottas simply through turn 13 had no grip in the middle of the corner and allowed Max to be all over the back of him and almost push him through the banking of the final corner and get the overtake done. And I'll just update quickly before I forget and piss all you off that Lewis Hamilton is up to second and is not anymore in third place. So we'll see now if Hamilton can stay within a second of Verstappen. And if they do have to pit again, Verstappen and Hamilton, then that's going to be a big advantage for Mercedes. Saying that, Verstappen now on lap 32 has pulled the gap to 1.6 seconds. So a fantastic first lap from behind the dirty air of Valtteri Bottas there. And he is now free to march off into the distance on now lap 32 out of 72. 40 laps to go in this Dutch Grand Prix. As Valtteri Bottas, by the way, is pitted, he will come out in third place because everyone else is so far behind. Saying that, Charles Leclerc is just behind Bottas, but still quite far behind. As Daniel Ricciardo, I've noticed, is just pitted. And Ricciardo is down in 12th place. Hamilton saying he's getting super lucky with traffic, man. Well, that's just the way it is. And sometimes it's not luck, sometimes it's just cutting your way through at good points, as Carlos Sainz and Esteban Ocon are in the pits now. Carlos Sainz has come out in 7th place. Of course, behind Gasly and also behind Alonso. He's 14 seconds behind Alonso, but of course he's not racing Alonso because Alonso is quite slow. Ocon, like I said, is already pitted. And that has pushed Norris up to 8th. And then you've got Perez in 9th. Yuki Tsunoda also is pitted. Ocon is now 10th. And then Ricciardo is in 11th. Kubica, I don't know if Kubica's pitted or not, but he has lost a couple positions now. And Giovinazzi is back up to 12th position. And then it is Russell in 13th. And then Kubica 14th. And then Stroll now 15th. Vettel 16th. And Yuki Tsunoda is in 17th position on now lap 33 at a 72. And Verstappen has a good, comfortable lead. Thankfully, they are ahead of quite a bit of traffic. And they're about to lap, actually, Esteban Ocon, who is in 10th place. So they're already lapping people in the points. just shows you how quick the front of the field is, especially when you're having to push for most of the race to maintain your advantage. You'll try and get past in some way, shape, or form. As Charles Leclerc is still in 4th place, hasn't pitted yet. Neither has Fernando Alonso. Here's a replay of Russell going around the outside of Kubica. I think Kubica let Giovinazzi back through. Is that Kubica? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. And now Lance Stroll passes Robert Kubica for 14th place. The Stroll is now making some decent progress. There you go, Kubica down to 15th, and George Russell has a 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane. So Russell definitely will not be scoring points in this Grand Prix. One, because he was in 11th, but with that penalty, and given how hard it's been to overtake so far in this Grand Prix, yeah, his chances are pretty much over now. And we're now on lap 5 out of 72. Just one lap away, as Giovinazzi has come back into the pits for some reason. I'm going to guess he's got a problem with his car. But Fernando Alonso, I was just going to say, has pitted. Let me just... And no, Giovinazzi has come back out again. So I'm going to guess he had a slow puncture or something. Did Giovinazzi, as Alonso, yep, has pitted. Alonso is still ahead of his teammate by about 1.3 seconds. And Charles Leclerc is now pitted. He will come out behind Pierre Gasly, but he will have now much fresher tyres, and maybe will have now a chance to get after him and finish in 4th place in this Grand Prix. By the way, interesting to note that Gasly is on the medium. A lot of drivers are on the medium. You got Ricciardo, Russell and Stroll on the hard compound, and so is Vettel, but the 2 Ferraris are out there on the hard compound tyre, which to me says that they definitely are going to the end, and others might not be. Yeah, Leclerc down to 5th, Sainz in 6th, then you got Norris and Perez now 7th and 8th, and then Alonso 9th, Ocon 10th, Ricciardo 11th, and then Russell is up to 12th. 13th is Lance Stroll, 14th now is Robert Kubica, and then 15th is Sebastian Vettel. And then 16th is Yuki Tsunoda. 17th is Latifi. And Giovinazzi has come back out in 18th place. What a shocker for him, as Max Verstappen has indeed now lapped not just Ocon, but Alonso as well. The 2 Alpines have been lapped. But we're halfway through, guys. The Dutch Grand Prix. Just want to say again, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell if you are new to the channel for more content like this, because we do this content for every race weekend, and we will be doing so for next weekend of the Italian Grand Prix. So don't forget to sub and hit the notifications bell for that. And as well, of course, to help out the channel, smash a like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. As we're now on lap 37, and Valtteri Bottas has just said pace is very good on team radio. And, well, we'll see what happens with Max and Lewis, because if they have to pit again, which they don't have to if they don't want to, because they've used 2 different types of compound, they're not obliged to come into the pits again. But if they do, if they both do, things are going to get interesting. As there's a yellow flag in Sector 1. Who is that? It's Sebastian Vettel, who by the looks of it has gone for a spin at turn 3 and is now down in 17th place. And Sebastian Vettel has had an absolutely miserable Dutch Grand Prix weekend. Qualified 17th, and he's now in 17th. He's only ahead of Giovinazzi and the 2 Haas's. That's how poor it's been. And yet, oh, so he sends it down the inside of Giovinazzi and just spins. Another spin to add And that's a Mercedes that had to go round him, I think, of Valtteri Bottas, who locked up his inside front. So, the Mercedes, they're lucky he didn't get caught up in anything. But yeah, Vettel, I don't know why that spin happened, to be honest. Maybe he locked the rears. I don't know. But there was nothing obvious there to show why he spun. Maybe he hit a bump, but it didn't really look like he did. I have to be honest. As Esteban Ocon is now back within a second of Fernando Alonso in this battle at Alpine. And with Lando Norris definitely having to pit again, and probably Sergio Perez as well, this is still a battle for 7th and 8th, really. And Ocon shouldn't really have the pace of his teammate, because at the end of the day, Alonso is on the fresher tyre and was quicker in most of the first stint. As Verstappen now on lap 39. Sorry that I didn't update it to lap 38, but there you go. As Verstappen is leading by 2.5 seconds. And Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen have now lapped Sergio Perez, who is in 8th place. Perez will have to pit again. Lando Norris hasn't pitted yet, and he is in 7th place, and he is the next man to be lapped on this grand tour of dominance from the front two. And Perez lifting off to the inside of the banking and playing fair, not doing anything untoward. I mean, making Hamilton go maybe slightly wider to the banking than he would have wanted, but nothing too bad there, to be honest. Valtteri Bottas isn't really going any quicker than the front two, so as long as the pace is maintained from Verstappen and Hamilton, they should be fine, really, to go to the end of this Grand Prix. As the battle between Stroll and Russell still rages on. Russell, interestingly, is only 1.2 seconds behind Daniel Ricciardo in what is a battle pretty much for 9th and 10th, even though Russell, as Lewis Hamilton now into the pits. So Lewis Hamilton pits again and goes on to another set on lap 40 of medium compound tyres. 2.5 second stop, a lot better of a pit stop. And given how much time he gained on the last outlap, oh, he's got traffic. He's got traffic. He's got traffic. He's got Ricciardo, Russell and Stroll. That is a horrible place to come out. But if he can replicate that outlap, he might be able to jump Verstappen. But with this traffic, I think that might be possibly not possible, if that makes any sense. As Robert Kubica has just been passed by Yuki Tsunoda down the field. But that could have been the perfect time to pit for Hamilton and Mercedes. But with the traffic situation, that was not what they needed. As Red Bull are not going to take any risks, and they are going to pit Max Verstappen on what will now be lap 41 out of 72. Can Max Verstappen maintain the lead of his home Grand Prix? Comes into the pits. Hard compound tyres go on. That's interesting. And now he comes to the exit of the pit lane. There is Lewis Hamilton in the background. Lewis Hamilton will not threaten him. And Verstappen maintains the lead. But Lewis Hamilton, I'm pretty sure, is, and yes he is, on a softer compound of tyres. So can Hamilton use that to his advantage and get after Max Verstappen? But that traffic was a big moment in this Grand Prix. If that track was clear when he came out, Hamilton, he might have put Verstappen under a lot of pressure then. But it was just wrong place, wrong time. Got to say, Mercedes probably should have looked for a better place, really, to drop him into than that, because that was just horrible at the back of that 3-car train to drop him into. And Verstappen now coming down to turn 11 on his first outlap after his second pit stop. And, well, Valtteri Bottas' strategy is pretty much destroyed, because I said earlier, if Max and Lewis were on a 2-stop, then Valtteri, if he's on a 1-stop, is in great position. They've both come out ahead of him. So, yeah, Valtteri's race is pretty much over. As Max Verstappen has actually had a very good lap. Even though Lewis Hamilton has done the fastest lap, of course, Max Verstappen has just done his outlap from the pits. So we'll see what Max can now do, as Hamilton is a 1 minute 13.2. We'll see whether Max Verstappen can now set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. Hard compound tyre is definitely looking as though it's a bit popular at the moment. I mean, it's not obviously very quick, I would say at the moment, that hard compound tyre, but it doesn't seem too bad to me. As Robert Kubica has just come into the pits, and it's now, so Latifi up in 15th, and then Vettel in 16th, and then Giovinazzi 17th, and Robert Kubica is now in 18th place, but is now on fresher tyres. So you never know, Kubica might still come through and finish up in 14th or 15th, which if he was to do that, that would be a very, very good result, as we're now looking at the battle between Ricciardo, Russell and Stroll for what is a net 9th, 10th and 11th, even though Russell does have, reminder, a 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane, which is an absolute shame, because if he didn't have that penalty, he would be heading most likely for a point in this Grand Prix. But at the moment, heading with Stroll right behind him, unless there's retirements up ahead, Russell is heading for absolutely nothing, as Russell has actually closed in quite a bit on Daniel Ricciardo through turn 3 and is now only half a second behind, but obviously is not going to go for an overtake because he's not close enough to the McLaren. As Stroll now into turn 10, closes on Russell, but now that Russell has DRS from Ricciardo, well, does he have DRS from Ricciardo? Yes, he does. Now that he has DRS from Ricciardo, Stroll cannot do anything about the Williams ahead. When Stroll really, given his pace, Stroll should be, if he passes Russell, passing Ricciardo as well, because Ricciardo is going very slowly at the moment. And Nikita Mazepin is the first retirement of the Grand Prix. Not surprised that he is the first retirement, but there you go. As we just readjust Kubica's name there. And we are now on lap 44 out of 72. And yeah, Daniel Ricciardo is travelling very slowly. I don't know why. I don't know if he's got some sort of problem with his power unit that we saw in the early part of the race. But Daniel Ricciardo is very slow. He's 17, pretty much now 18 seconds behind Esteban Ocon, when the gap to Ocon was a lot smaller before the pit stop phase. So I think Daniel Ricciardo has some sort of problem with his car, because it shouldn't be that big, really. As Russell did get close to the back of Norris, but the reason I didn't really mention it is because he was never going to get an overtake done. And Norris now should be very quick and should really be let through by Daniel Ricciardo, because Norris is much quicker. And I'll just update that Lando Norris is now down in 11th place now in the Grand Prix. And Nikita Mazepin is 20th and, like I said, out of the race. As Mick Schumacher is nearly a lap down on the entire field. Just shows you how bad Haas are. And we are now on lap 45. And Lewis Hamilton is 3 seconds behind Max Verstappen in the battle for victory. As his replay of Gasly bumping his way through turn 11 and turn 12. And Gasly driving very well. And 4th place would be a massive result for them because Alpine at the moment are heading for 6 points and AlphaTauri heading for 12. So that would be a gain of 6 points. And let me just check what that would mean in the Constructors' Championship for the moment. Of course, at the moment, Lewis Hamilton would lose the lead of the championship to Max Verstappen. And Verstappen would go into the lead by, well, especially with Hamilton with the fastest lap, Verstappen would lead by 3 points going into Monza. Couldn't be any closer, could it? And in the Constructors, at the moment, as it stands, Ferrari will go into 3rd ahead of McLaren. And Alpine are only 8 points clear of AlphaTauri. So as it stands, AlphaTauri will move to within 2 points of the Alpine team in the battle for 5th, as Aston Martin, unfortunately, are getting left behind in 7th place and having a very poor season. Sebastian Vettel, by the way, has just pitted and I think is now in 18th place. 18th for Vettel. And, just to replay that, I think they just went through some sort of paper bag or something. That's what that debris was. If we just saw it on the TV broadcast. I think it was a paper bag or something. I didn't quite see the full shot, so I can't say for sure what I think it is. But yeah, Sebastian Vettel now in 18th place and 2.5 seconds behind Robert Kubica. As Max Verstappen, by the way, is 3.5 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton. Valtteri Bottas is 8 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton and 11.5 seconds off the lead. And Charles Leclerc, at the moment, on the hard compound tyre, pitted a lot later than Pierre Gasly and is on a harder compound. So in theory, Leclerc should have the better tyre life at the end. But is he catching Gasly? I don't know at the moment because they're not showing the timing screen. He is. It was 8 seconds a couple laps ago. Now it's 7.5. So he is catching Gasly, but he's not catching him by enough to really put himself in a position to pass, I'd say, later on. As Max Verstappen, now on lap 48, is 4 seconds clear pretty much of Lewis Hamilton. And I think Mercedes have, as Alonso now is tucked right up behind Sergio Perez in the battle for 7th and 8th. I don't think Red Bull are going to go to the end here with Sergio Perez. Just don't see why they would. But, yeah, I think Mercedes here have really just kind of given up. They've tried everything that they can, and it's not worked. So, you know, what else can they do except hope that in the final 24 laps of this Grand Prix, Max Verstappen has a problem, as Hamilton is saying, I'm not going to make it to the end on these tyres. I think he's pushed that hard today, has Hamilton, that he's just not able to keep the tyres in the window to keep them from graining so quickly, because he's seeing his rival up ahead pulling away, and obviously when that happens you try to push even harder to get back up with them, but if they keep pulling away then it's just a slow downfall from there. Sergio Perez does pit in the Red Bull, pushing the two Alpines up to 7th and 8th now on lap 49 out of 72. Let's see where Perez comes out. He will come out, I believe, behind that train of Ricciardo, Russell and Stroll. And he comes out behind Ricciardo. Will he jump Russell? Russell now through turn 1. And Sergio Perez on the soft tyre just about comes out behind Russell. So Perez is now down in... And Norris, by the way, I didn't see. He got past Daniel Ricciardo. So Norris is up to 9th. Ricciardo is now in 10th place. And now it is Russell 11th, Perez 12th, and Stroll 13th. Perez, though, is on the soft tyre. And if he can utilise the pace of the Red Bull well, he can absolutely finish in the points. And he's now all over the back of the Williams. The Williams on quite worn, now hard compound tyres, as Lewis Hamilton on lap 50 does the new fastest lap of 1:13.1. And Russell overtaken by Perez into turn 11. Easy overtake there for Sergio Perez. So Perez into 11th, and he's only 3 or 4 seconds, I think, behind Daniel Ricciardo, who will definitely be overtaken, as Ricciardo is also on the hard compound tyre and is not going very quickly at all. As the two Alpines are in 7th and 8th place. Will they hold on to that? We'll have to see what Sergio Perez does and whether Perez will have the pace to come through. But if they can get that Alpine, then that would limit how good AlphaTauri's result has been. As Yuki Tsunoda, talking about AlphaTauri, Yuki Tsunoda comes into his pit box and has retired from the Dutch Grand Prix, by the looks of it, with some sort of issue. So Latifi is up to 14th, and then Giovinazzi is 15th, and then it should be Kubica now in 16th place, and is now a replay of a Haas car of Mick Schumacher going through the gravel in between turn 11 and 12, just simply running too wide, carrying too much speed into the corner, and Mick still in 19th and of course last at the moment. As Norris, by the way, is currently on the hard compound tyre, hunting down furiously Esteban Ocon, and it says that Norris will catch Ocon in 2 laps. So we're going to have quite a battle for 7th, 8th, 9th, hopefully, in a few moments' time. But, yes, Tsunoda, let me just update that he is pretty much out of this race. Vettel up to 17th, and then Schumacher will go up to 18th. And we're now on lap 51. Lewis Hamilton has closed the gap down to 2.9 seconds, but Max Verstappen is still in a very comfortable position at the moment, as Norris is catching Ocon very quickly by about 1.5 seconds per lap by the looks of it. And those hard compound tyres definitely are working well, and you can see that really up front with Max Verstappen. Also see it a bit with Charles Leclerc, as Leclerc has now cut the gap down between him and Gasly to now 6 seconds. So Charles Leclerc, and he's catching even more now. So Leclerc on his way, and of course there are 20 now laps to go, as we're now on lap 52 out of 72 in this race. As Lewis Hamilton there had just lapped the 2 Alpines, I believe, and he's now 2.5 seconds behind Max Verstappen, still pushing hard. Well, can't really pit, because if he does, then he won't be able to catch, I don't think, Valtteri Bottas by the end. So really, he's going to have to tough it out until the end of the race and hope that Verstappen has a problem, as Charles Leclerc has now cut the gap down between himself and Pierre Gasly in the battle for 4th, down to 5 seconds already. So Gasly is now starting to drop with his lap times. As Sergio Perez hasn't really gained as much on Ricciardo as I thought he would. I mean, he's now closed up behind him, 1.2 seconds behind, but I thought he'd already be within a second. Those soft tyres don't seem to be very good, I have to say. Not a massive surprise, because this track does wear out the tyres quite a bit, considering that, you know, the high load and the long, fast, hard corners really does put quite a load through the tyres, as now on lap 53, the gap between Verstappen and Hamilton is 2.4 seconds. It did briefly go down to 2.3 seconds, as Hamilton is given everything he's got, but I still feel as though Max Verstappen is holding back and could go quicker if he wanted to. So we'll see if that is the case, if Lewis Hamilton does start to get even closer. Charles Leclerc is 4.5 seconds behind Pierre Gasly. Esteban Ocon a second and a half behind Alonso. Norris is now just 2.5 seconds behind Ocon, as Hamilton has cut the gap down again on now lap 54 to 2.1 seconds. So Lewis is catching. But like I said, I still feel as though Max has probably got pace in reserve if he needs it. And we're now looking at Sergio Perez, who is now within a second of Ricciardo. Ricciardo does his interesting little strategy that I don't know if you guys seen at Austria, where he deliberately drives onto the grass to kick up dirt and spray it into the car behind's face. That's a new strategy that Daniel Ricciardo has. Very weird, but also very, very smart strategy there to cause a disturbance to the driver behind. And I'm pretty sure he'll do it again when they come through the banking onto the pit straight. He'll probably do it again. And it's just to put off the driver behind. It's a very smart strategy, but I definitely wouldn't try it in the wet, put it that way. As Lewis Hamilton has caught Max Verstappen massively on this lap. Now lap 55 out 72, and Hamilton is only 1.3 seconds. Verstappen has just lapped a car. Hamilton now only 1.1 seconds, now only 1.2 seconds behind Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. Verstappen there's had a very poor lap, and whoever that car is ahead of Lewis Hamilton has got to get out of the way. That is absolutely terrible, whoever that is. And it's Sebastian Vettel being an absolute twat, I have to say. And finally Hamilton is let through, but Vettel really should get a penalty for that, because Vettel waited way too long to let Lewis through there. Needed to be letting him through really at turn 4 or 5. Waited until turn 9, I think, as the gap's now back up to 1.8 seconds, as Max has now lapped, I think for the second time, Antonio Giovinazzi. Not Giovinazzi, Robert Kubica, sorry, who is in 16th place. And now the gap's up to 2 seconds. But yeah, Vettel there really costing Hamilton, maybe as well. He cost Verstappen. Maybe that's why Max Verstappen dropped so much time to Lewis Hamilton on that lap. But yeah, Vettel, I think, will probably get a penalty there, because that was quite obvious blocking. As Lewis Hamilton, now on the run through turn 4, 5, and 6, is still pushing as hard as he can, as Vettel there, down the inside of Kubica at turn 6, I think. I would have liked to have seen that, but we're not going to. And we're now seeing a replay of Sergio Perez going around the outside of Daniel Ricciardo at turn 1. So Perez is now into the points from the pit lane. Okay drive so far, nothing great from Perez. If he was to finish in 7th, I'd say good drive, but not quite yet, I don't think, from him. As Hamilton and Kubica, by the way, stayed ahead of Vettel through turn 6, so Kubica still in 16th place in that battle down there. As now on lap 57, Hamilton can see his rival, but he cannot get anywhere near him at the moment. And Sebastian Vettel has now passed Robert Kubica. So Vettel is up to 16th place, and Kubica now down to 17th in the Alfa Romeo with 15 laps to go. And this race really has flown by. It's been quite a poor race, really, in terms of excitement. I mean, as you guys know from last week, I'm the master of somehow talking for 2 hours straight and not stopping, even though nothing's going on. And you guys know I'm very good at that. But I have to say, in this race, it's not been really much of anything to talk about. We've had a couple glimpses of excitement, but nothing really to, get us going. As Charles Leclerc is now just solidly 4.5 seconds behind Gasly and not able really to break through against Pierre. As Now they are on lap 58 out of 72. And Verstappen is 1.8 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton. Bottas 17.5 seconds behind Hamilton and about 19 seconds behind Max Verstappen is Valtteri Bottas. And yeah, the fight really we're looking out for, I'd say, is Perez at the moment and possibly Norris and Ocon. Russell and Stroll, of course, are still fighting desperately over 12th and 13th place, but that's for, of course, non-points positions. And Russell will have a 5-second penalty, so Russell is going to finish in 13th place anyway. As Verstappen there lapping the Alfa Romeo of Antonio Giovinazzi. Shame for Giovinazzi, he's had a very poor race. I'd love to know why he pitted so early, straight away. I'm going to guess that was a puncture or something. Couldn't have been a strategy call that forced him to do that, because it made no sense, really, to pit at that point, as Hamilton now laps Giovinazzi in the Alfa. As Verstappen has actually lost a bit of time on this lap. Not on this lap, on the previous lap. It did go down the gap to 1.5 seconds, but now Verstappen starting to extend that through the first sector. According to AWS, Max Verstappen's tyre performance is not very good. Apparently, according to them, his left front tyres, left front and left rear, are struggling, and his right front and right rear are not in great condition, but okay enough, as Hamilton has lost a bit of time on this lap. It's now 2.5 seconds behind. I'm going to guess he's lost time in the traffic or made a mistake. As Verstappen through turn 11 and 12. Red Bull are still stood waiting in case of a pit stop, but I don't see why they would try another pit stop. Why would they? As long as they can keep a 2-second buffer, and now it's 2.5 seconds with 12 laps to go. As long as they can keep that, then there's no point pitting first if they're both going to pit. Plus, there is 12 laps to go. And if Lewis Hamilton was to pit now, he'd have to gain, what, 2.5 seconds a lap if he was going to overtake Verstappen? You know, catch him, pass him, win the race. He'd have to, 2.5 seconds per lap would have to be his speed to even have a hope of doing that. So really, Red Bull need to keep him out on track. Even if his tyres are going away, need to keep him out there. As, by the way, Antonio Giovinazzi has just passed Nicholas Latifi for 14th place. And now Latifi under threat from Sebastian Vettel for 15th. As Verstappen being willed on by the home crowd, as the gap is now up to 2.8 seconds of Verstappen, despite, according to AWS, having tyre issues. Max Verstappen going even quicker on this lap, and half a second quicker on this lap alone. Extends the lead up to 2.9 seconds. And he has just over 10 laps to go until a vital victory is taken in this World Championship fight. Sebastian Vettel overtakes Nicholas Latifi now in 15th place. And who is this we're looking at? Lance Stroll. Still stuck behind Russell. He's been stuck behind Russell the entire race. Driver of the day voting. Perez is winning it at the moment. Don't really see why. He's come through from a low position, but I wouldn't say it's particularly great drive considering how good his car is. I'd have to say drive of the day would have to be Max Verstappen if he does win. And Max Verstappen, by the way, a second quicker than Lewis Hamilton on this lap alone. So yeah, I'd have to give it to Max Verstappen. And guys, let me know at the end of this race in the live chat who is your driver of the day. And reminder, I will not be going live later with the race review, but I will be recording it right after this race watch along finishes and then uploading it probably straight away so I can get to bed earlier because I'm very tired. Like I said, been up since 4:30 in the morning. So, yeah, that will be coming out. I don't know when, but probably sometime between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m., I'd imagine. And hopefully you guys will enjoy a quick review of what has been a very uneventful Dutch Grand Prix, which we feared, but that is what has happened. Luckily, though, the next Grand Prix is Monza. Unluckily, though, the return of the sprint qualifying is also Monza. As Verstappen comes through turn 10 on lap 62 out of 72. Stroll continues to follow Russell. This battle really is futile because Russell is 14 seconds behind Ricciardo, and Ricciardo is 10.5 seconds behind Perez. So they're, 24 seconds really behind a points finish of these guys. So this battle is really just for pride, if nothing else. And now lap 63 out of 72, and Max Verstappen is leading by 4.1 seconds. By the way, Gasly in fourth is still fourth, obviously, and is 4.7 seconds clear of Charles Leclerc. Leclerc seems to me as if the hard compound tyre is going through a bit of a graining phase at the moment. Lando Norris also going through a bit of that. Perez now tucked up right behind the McLaren driver. I think Norris has driven pretty well, I have to say. Saying that, with Perez and Norris, Perez trying to pass Norris through turn 1, unable to do so. Norris holds on. So, Perez, well, if Perez is going to finish, say, in the top 8, he's going to have to pass Norris at the end of this lap. Because if he doesn't, then catching and passing Ocon might be a bit tough towards the end. Norris, though, got to say, his pace has dropped off quite a bit. By the way, as it stands, Lando Norris would lose his 3rd place in the Drivers' Championship. He'd drop to 4th, Perez would stay in 5th, and Charles Leclerc would, I think, stay in 6th, but that would actually close the gap quite a lot to the drivers ahead, as Sebastian Vettel has now climbed up to 14th in the Aston Martin. So having a decent end of race. 13th and 14th really is where Aston Martin have looked as though they were going to be this weekend. This track just doesn't suit their car. And I think at Monza, they'll definitely be a lot stronger. Especially with Lance Stroll, who is, historically speaking, very, very strong around the Temple of Speed. And of course, Sebastian Vettel has won the Italian Grand Prix twice before. And has had, I'm trying to remember how many podiums for Ferrari he had. I think 3? 2015. Oh no, yeah, he did. 2015, 16, and 17. So they should be a lot stronger, Aston Martin, in a week's time. Fernando Alonso, though, making a lot of progress, and I've not noticed this. He's tucked up right behind the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz has had very poor pace today. Don't know why. Charles Leclerc also, his pace has really dropped off. He's now 6.5 seconds behind Pierre Gasly. But Carlos Sainz is half a minute behind Charles Leclerc and is now under threat from Fernando Alonso for 6th place. And Alonso, I'm sure, will be very keen to pass his fellow Spaniard. He gets close through turn 1. And is Alonso going to go right around the outside? Oh, there was so nearly contact between the two Spaniards, but if Alonso can get just a 10th or 2 closer out of the final corner, Alonso, I think, around the outside of turn 1, I think that's a move that's going to happen, because Carlos Sainz, to me, looks as though his tyres have gone. And I'd probably say the same with Charles Leclerc, who has lost, he's losing a lot of time now. Very weird that hard compound tyre is now just dropping off completely. But with Max Verstappen, it's not, as Verstappen is still 4 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton up front, as Alonso continues to harry Carlos Sainz, and a top 6 finish would be a great result for Alpine and would really help their cause. And it would, if they were to finish in 6th with Alonso and 8th with Ocon, they'd score the same amount of points as AlphaTauri, which of course would be a massive benefit for the constructors to not allow AlphaTauri's good result to close the gap on Alpine in the Constructors' Championship. Alonso that time not able to really get close enough through the final corner and into turn 1. And here's a replay of Max Verstappen locking the inside front, but doesn't go wide. Just eases off the brake pedal, bit of a braking cadence, and easily makes the corner. As Sergio Perez has finally passed Lando Norris for 9th place. So Sergio Perez is now in 9th. But I fear for Perez that he's lost maybe a bit too much time in that battle to pass Ocon before the end, as we're now on lap 67 out of 72. Just under 6 laps to go now. And Perez will try now desperately to get after that Alpine of Ocon. Ocon, by the way, is also gaining on that battle for 6th and 7th between Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso. So we might actually have a train of cars behind Carlos Sainz by the end here, because it seems as though Sainz is just desperate to get to the end of the race because his tyres are pretty much gone. And Perez saying that was not very fair. And there was contact between Norris and Perez on the exit of turn 1. So here we go. Norris defends to the inside quite late, but not late enough that Perez couldn't react. And I'd have to look back at that, to be honest. To be honest, Perez was still turning right into Norris. I'd have to say racing incident from the first look there. I don't think, and I hope it won't be a penalty. If it is a penalty for Norris, though, I don't think he'll lose anything, because he is still in 10th, and he's 10 seconds clear of Daniel Ricciardo, so it's not going to be that harsh of a penalty for him. As we are now on lap 68 out of 72. And Alonso and Sainz are now coming up to the back of, as Mercedes, I think, are about to pit Lewis Hamilton for a fastest lap point. Well, they've got the fastest lap at the moment. Oh no, it's Valtteri Bottas. Why are they pitting Bottas? Lewis Hamilton needs that point, as Sainz laps the Alfa Romeo down the inside there. And so does Alonso, but Alonso unable to make his way through in the confusion, or possible confusion there. But there is another car still to be lapped by those two, as Ocon, Perez are closing behind on this pair. And the next car for these two to lap will be Nicholas Latifi, who is in 16th position, as we are now on lap 69 out of 72, and Bottas going to try and go for the fastest lap point, even though I don't understand why, because Hamilton surely needs that point. Every point matters. Every point matters. And here's a replay of Bottas' slow stop. Was it slow, or did he just wait? Yep, just waited. I think was just trying to make sure that all the tyres were fitted correctly and not take any risks, because he was going to come out in 3rd place, and he didn't want his race to end there and then. As Max Verstappen, with 3 laps to go, is 3.5 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton. As Charles Leclerc, interestingly, has started closing the gap on Pierre Gasly again. It's now back down to 4.5 seconds. Don't quite understand why. Got to say, these very hard compounds, C3, C2, C1. I'm trying to think what race it was. Was it Baku or France where we had this, where the compounds were just performing so differently from what we expected. And I think we really have seen that today, where the compounds are just performing as if they're different compounds at times. And there's, just weird graining phases and, just very weird, the certain patterns of this Grand Prix. I can't remember what race it was, whether it was France or Baku, but we had a race this season where there were very weird patterns in the race where people on certain tyres were doing stuff that they shouldn't have been doing, really, given the tyres they were on. As Alonso, I think, closes up there to Sainz into turn 1. We're not seeing it right now, but we can see it on the timing screen on the left-hand side. Alonso only half a second behind as Valtteri Bottas does get the fastest lap of the race. As, by the way, Ocon and Perez are now right behind Alonso and Sainz. And I would like to watch Fernando Alonso and Carlos Sainz. I know FOM hate Carlos Sainz for some reason and love to never show him. But right now, we need to be seeing a 4-car battle for 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th and not a pit stop for fucking Lewis Hamilton. As it's now lap 71. Out 72 as Russell in the Williams comes into the pits. And Lewis Hamilton comes in and he's going to go for the fastest lap point. Perez passes Ocon for 8th. I'd love to be seeing it, Mr. Director. I'd love to be seeing it. But we're not. Perez up to 8th. More shoddy TV directing from FOM. So Sergio Perez is up to 8th. Fernando Alonso still right behind Carlos Sainz, but we're never bloody going to see it. Just show the little box for crying out loud. I'd be happy with that. But they're not going to. All we're going to watch now for the final lap is Max Verstappen by the looks of it. And nothing else, because according to FOM, well, I'm sure to the Dutch people nothing else matters, but a lot else matters at the moment. As Alonso, he's so close to the back of Sainz. I don't know why we're not seeing like a little mini screen of it, because it's so close, that fight for 6th, 7th, and 8th as well, because Perez is right behind Alonso too. As we are now on, guys, the final lap of the Dutch Grand Prix. And Max Verstappen now beginning this final lap. And he's now already through turn 4, 5, and 6. Be Frank. And now through turn 7 and 8. No Dutch driver has ever took pole position at Zandvoort. He did that yesterday. No Dutch driver has ever won the Dutch Grand Prix. And surely he is about to do that. The last, and Fernando Alonso has passed Carlos Sainz, but again, we haven't seen it because FOM are absolute just twats. I have to say it. So Alonso's up to 6th. As Latifi and Russell are now all the way down the order. As Max Verstappen rounds turn 13. After what has been a up and down last couple of races, Max Verstappen is now right back where he wants to be, in the lead of the Drivers' Championship and winning the 2021 Dutch Grand Prix in front of a jubilant home crowd. Congratulations to Max Verstappen. He's my driver of the day for a brilliant, easy drive, you got to say, considering the competition he has to deal with. Lewis Hamilton will finish in 2nd and get the fastest lap point, but that doesn't matter because Max Verstappen will still take the lead of the Drivers' Championship. So Lewis Hamilton 2nd, and then it will be Bottas in 3rd. Let me just update that Russell finished down in 17th for some reason. Don't know why, but I'll just update that. So Stroll 12th, Vettel 13th, Giovinazzi 14th, and then it'll be Kubica in 15th. Let me just update that. And right, so I'll read out the final finishing order in just a moment. Kubica 15th, and then you got Latifi in 16th, and then Russell 17th, and Schumacher 18th. So guys, that is the 2021 Dutch Grand Prix, and here is your final finishing order, if I can speak English. Max Verstappen wins his home Grand Prix in Holland, and again, takes the lead of the Drivers' World Championship by 3 points now, going into the Italian Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton is second, Bottas third, Gasly fourth, Leclerc fifth, Alonso sixth. I would love to see the overtake by Fernando Alonso, but I don't think we will. Carlos Sainz finishing in P7, Perez 8th, Ocon 9th, and Norris in 10th. And then the rest of your order that finished the race but not in the points: Daniel Ricciardo P11, P12 Lance Stroll, 13th Vettel, 14th Giovinazzi, 15th Kubica, 16th Nicholas Latifi, 17th Russell, 18th Mick Schumacher. And your only retirements from the Dutch Grand Prix: Yuki Tsunoda and Nikita Mazepin. And yeah, not a good race really. Quite a boring race, but what an atmosphere and what a result for the home crowd in Holland. And there you go, guys. That is the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. Now, I just quickly want you guys in the chat to give me two things. One, a rating out of 10 for this Grand Prix, and your driver of the day. I'll go first. So, driver of the day, Max Verstappen. And rating out of 10, I will go for a 2 out of 10. I thought that was a very boring race, and without the crowd being what they are, that race would have been even more boring, to be honest. So yeah, 2 out of 10. Terrible race. Qualifying was definitely more exciting, and I think the only way you're really going to get a good race around there is if, sadly, it does rain, which, of course, we have a bit of PTSD from as of late. But yeah, that was a very bad race. Nothing really went on in that Grand Prix. There was a couple good overtakes, but really, it was quite boring, in my opinion. So 2 out of 10. You guys might think I'm being quite harsh, but even if I was to be a bit generous, I'd say 3 out of 10 at most. I wouldn't even call this an average race. I'd say it's definitely just not a good race at all, or even an average race. It's just, yeah, wasn't a good race today. But great atmosphere, and hopefully in the future, we will have a good Grand Prix here in Holland. Max Verstappen is currently celebrating with his team. By the way, fastest lap went to Lewis Hamilton. So Hamilton is now in second in the championship by 3 points. Max Verstappen, of course, leading by 3 points. Let's look at your comments to see what you guys thought of the race in terms of the rating out of 10 and driver of the day. Rooksfoot says 3 out of 10. Dexter says 2 out of 10. Vinster says the commentary made it better. Thank you very much. Greg says Max 3 out of 10. KG says 4.2 out of 10. And then says Verstappen driver of the day. Dexter says Gasly driver of the day for him. JDM says 5 out of 10 and Max is his driver of the day. A 6 out of 10 from Penguined. And Alonso driver of the day. Yeah, Alonso was good today. Definitely very good. I would like to see his overtake on Carlos Sainz, but we'll see it on probably Tuesday afternoon when they release it on the YouTube channel of Formula 1. Cormulapedia says Max 3 out of 10. Victor Bangle says 2 out of 10. Walid says 4 out of 10. 4 out of 10. Looks to me, Astro Stevo, sorry, says 3 out of 10. Yeah, most of you, to me, and yeah, some more 2s and 1s. And by the way, thank you, Bert, for that comment. Says commentary 10 out of 10. Yeah, by the looks of it, most of you are going for a below average race, which would be, 2, 3, 4 out of 10. Like I said, the only real time we're going to get a real exciting race here is if we get, safety cars to throw things up in the air. And also some rain, but this track isn't really a great track for racing, but it is a great track. Let's not forget that. It is a great racing track, and it is a great track to see these drivers, very, very good drivers, test themselves in so many unusual corners. I mean, how many times do you see banked corners in Formula 1 anymore? Like we've got Zandvoort. CB says, great commentating, your Subi in the BBC. Here's that. Worst race of the season, says Sven. It's not the worst race. Monaco was the worst race of the season. We were literally counting down the laps until the end. At least with this race, we had the fight for 6th, 7th, and 8th, and 9th, even though we didn't bloody see it. But I will just quickly put on the screen that the race is over, just for confirmation. And I'll pretty much, guys, call it here. So, yeah, thank you guys for coming along for this race watch along. Hopefully, you'll join us in a week's time for the 2021 Italian Grand Prix. Hopefully, Nib will be along with us for that Grand Prix, which I think will definitely be a lot more exciting at Monza. And I think we will have a very close fight yet again between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. Just want to update you guys as to the schedule for the next week or so. Also, next weekend's race weekend schedule will be different from what it was this weekend and also last weekend. So, firstly, race review. I'll record that as soon as possible and get it uploaded probably between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. UK time. So, within the next, say, 3 hours at most for you guys. And then what I will do is, obviously, I recorded the race watch along, the part where the race was. I will edit up the best bits of the stream and I will upload that tomorrow afternoon. I don't know when tomorrow afternoon, but it will probably be sometime before 5 p.m. at the latest, probably 2, 3 p.m. I'm aiming for. So I'll try and get it out for you guys. Tomorrow afternoon, so you guys can catch up on the best bits of the stream. And then after that, the next piece of content will be next Friday, where I'll be doing 2 watch-alongs. Firstly, for practice 1, the first session of the weekend for the Italian Grand Prix, and then the pre-sprint qualifying session on Friday night at 5 p.m. UK time. Don't know when the first practice session is, can't remember exactly, but I know the qualifying on the Friday is on 5 p.m. UK time, so don't forget to come to that. And as well, just a reminder, on the Saturday, when sprint qualifying is, I will not be covering, because the last time I did a sprint qualifying watch-along, I hated it. Not because I hate doing watch-along, it's because I hate sprint qualifying. So there won't be any streams from me that day, but I will upload that day, probably just to be a bit of a dick, the best bits of my qualifying watch-along from Friday, and you can enjoy the best bits of the real qualifying session. And then next Sunday will be the same schedule as always. 11 a.m. UK time, race preview for the Italian Grand Prix, then race watch-along for the Italian Grand Prix at 1:30 p.m. UK time, and then the race review. From now on, I might just do what I'm about to do and just quickly record it after and upload it sooner, because I could probably get it out sooner than I do when I do it live. And of course, the sooner I get it out, the better. So we'll see about that. But that's the schedule in the next week. There's how many more videos and streams combined coming up after this one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 videos / streams coming up in the next 7 days. So plenty of stuff to keep you guys entertained in the next week. Thank you guys for coming along for this race weekend. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell for more content like this. We do this for every race weekend, and we will continue until the very end of 2021. So don't forget to sub and hit the notifications bell. Also, smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. And as well, don't forget to join my Discord server, link below in the description. Best place that is for notifications of my videos and streams. And also, we have 500 people pretty much in that server, and it is very active, especially when it comes to debating, not just F1, but motorsport in general. So if you want to join that and have a fun time, then make sure to join that server. But guys, until my race review coming up in 2 to 2.5 hours time, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.